And good morning. Hold up. Sound check. Let me make sure this thing is working. Can I get... There we go. I think we're good. Okay. Good morning, Mo. Good morning, Chris. Cheers. Cold brew. Yes, cold brew because yesterday forecast was 101, 103, 104. Pick a number. I have a little weather station thingy in my backyard. It said 107. So I don't know what number is right, but it is flaming hot, and it's supposed to be a little hotter today, it seems. So stay cool out there, folks. Okay. Buenos dias. Buenos. Episode 135, September 6th in the year of 2024. And ask a question. What are you thinking about? What are you working on with Business Central? Like, I tend to have these, as I mentioned, these clusters of things come up. My mic is like spicy today. I don't know what's going on. Let me just turn it down a touch. So, these clusters of topics come up with Business Central, certain feature requests, certain customer types. And so, yeah, what are you guys running into? What is going on? And the weekend was semi-productive. As I mentioned, I ordered a new car stereo for my daughter for her 2007 Volkswagen. So we busted that thing open. We only have 3 of the 4 speakers replaced. The rear speakers are pretty easy. The front speakers, basically semi-custom. You got to drill out rivets to get the thing out of the door. You then have to mount an adapter, and then you have to hardwire in the speakers. The adapter connectors were not available for this particular car for the front door, so we had to cut the wires, rewire, solder, put connectors, not a big deal, but it just slows everything down on the first try. And then it's a 2007, so we're discovering okay, certain adhesives and glues and parts aren't intact anymore, so we're having to kind of put the door back together, and I had to re-glue everything, and yeah. So it took time, but now that we know how everything's put together, where all the clips are, what's fallen apart, what needs to be reconstructed, we're good. So we just need to find the time to do the passenger side front door. And so there we go. Had to pull it open. Couldn't even get the door panel off, but had to figure that out. So it's kind of propped up there. And so my daughter figured out how to fully disassemble the car. And these are, I don't know how good they are, but they're Infinity Reference Series 6.5 inch, and they sound pretty good. They kind of cant the tweeter up at an angle to point upward from the door location towards you. So they sound pretty good. Noticeable improvement over factory. So I think it's worth the upgrade. And eventually we'll get the head unit in there and the backup camera, which is really the backup camera and like Apple CarPlay are the two big things that we lack in the car. It does have a 6 CD changer. Amazingly, it still works flawlessly, but my daughter's digging out CDs of Eminem and like Chemical Brothers and stuff from my CDs from many years ago. Let's just put it that way. So, and then to top off the car stereo, we were all tired. So I accidentally bumbled into, we have a full-time, 7 day a week, hardcore, authentic dim sum restaurant by us, which I think we've been there once, but I just forgot about it. So I ordered the full suite of dim sum. It was like $130 for that. It's hello inflation, but it was so good. We pigged out and just had a great time. So it was a great way to cap off a long day of work with a car stereo. So that was the weekend. It was good. And Monday was a holiday in the United States, as many of you may know. And so the Berliners got a free holiday there. Since we're off, I said, hey, take the day off, even though El Salvador doesn't, I don't believe, celebrate that day. So they had a Monday off as well, the interns. So the weekly projects, we pretty much wrapped up the help desk configuration. So we're doing a soft open of the full service Business Central help desk out of Berlin, El Salvador. And is my lighting okay? And we're working on building out more formal structure for ERP Center of Excellence there, which I'll talk about a little more, just making it a sustainable program. So it's not just me, it's the Berliners kind of running the program themselves. And that includes having a more of a structured training program that's repeatable that the Berliners will do. And that will be for, let's say, if they're tech fluent grads who want to learn more about Business Central, and also for, say, customers in the United States, and also for Latin America. So because they speak Spanish and I don't, they're bilingual, they will be able to train in English and Spanish in Berlin and service partners throughout all of Latin America. So that's a pretty exciting opportunity. So they are building out that training infrastructure. And like I mentioned, the clusters of functionality requests this week, the last 2 weeks plus, AP and AR payment application. So it just comes up in clusters. We have 2 or 3, well, at least 3 customers looking for AP and AR payment application of various forms. And people might say, oh, well, yeah, you just bulk apply. It's like, no, you can't. The data source, the application method, the timing, the technique, like it's just, you would think it's straightforward, but each customer has their own very quirky way of doing things. And like we're trying to figure out, can we package this up? Can we make this repeatable? On the AP side, definitely we are making it repeatable. AR side so far, very different scenarios. So yeah, those are the weekly projects. Okay, you may have heard, if you have a pulse and are in the Business Central world, if you're not on Twitter, get on over to Twitter or X, whatever it's called now. That's where just a lot of the stuff happens in the Business Central community. As you can see, Yoon Chu, as always, the most prolific blogger, as far as I can tell, in Business Central world. I don't know how he does it. He has a blog post on the Business Central 2024 Release Wave 2, aka BC version 25. It is available for preview. So if you create a new sandbox, you can choose version 25, and it clearly says preview. So Microsoft is making that available to test, to play around with, to get feedback, find bugs, so give them feedback. I don't know what the feedback channel is, but I have one through the MVP program where they're asking for feedback, I believe. I don't know if that's publicly available or to partners or what the process is, but they're looking for feedback, I think. So if you find a bug, let someone know. And as you can see in the screenshot, version 25.0.23364, 23635 preview. So I just set up a sandbox and seems to work fine. I haven't checked out any new features. So yeah, that's what's going on there. So head on over to Yun Chu's blog, yzhums.com/55364 to read about that preview. And there are many people writing blogs and doing videos on the new features, which I don't even know what they are yet. Wednesday, as I mentioned, AR Cash Apply, and this one kind of blew my mind. I've known this customer for many years from the Dynamics GP world. They are now migrating to Business Central, and they're a high volume, low margin, low dollar amount business. Surprisingly, given what they do, you'd think, given their size and revenue, that they would make money in a different way, but no. This is an example of what they do. Very high transaction volume. For example, one customer for one day, they may receive 100 payments per day, and vast majority of those are paper checks because they're in the United States. I don't know why. I think it has to do with their industry and how those transactions are settled. Very specific to the industry that everything is paper-based. It's a very anachronistic industry in that respect. So everything is very legal, very formal, very paper-based, and so everything has to be paid and settled on paper. And so they may receive 100 paper checks a day to pay off these. And one customer may have had a bunch of transactions on a given day. And when they pay that off, they will send in 17 separate checks, each for $25. Instead of sending one check for 400 some dollars, nope, 17 separate checks because they can't commingle the transactions. Everything has to be discreetly processed, paid separately, fully traceable. So they have to send in 17 separate checks for $25. It's crazy. Like, how do you make money? Like, one, how do you make money at $25 a pop? How do you deal with the overhead of 17 checks at $25 each? So somehow they process this. They're looking for a more efficient way to bring these payments in and apply them. So that's what we're offering to them. And even then, they don't want to fully automate the process for whatever reason. The application process is apparently a nightmare. So they only want exact matches based on, say, external document number. So it's like, whoa, just yes, the European mind, as the meme goes, the European mind cannot comprehend the American banking system. And I had a just crazy call with a colleague. He does C# development projects, and he has a very talented C# developer, very, very smart guy. And as very, very smart, talented, clever developers go, the developer's code is so dense and so complex that my friend, who is a very good developer himself, cannot read. He's now managing more, so he's less in the code. But when he looks at this code, he cannot just glance at it and do a code review. It is that complex and that dense. And if you follow .NET, latest version of .NET, and the syntax has become very complex to the point where if you used to develop .NET 4 years ago, you might not recognize the syntax and the whatever you call it, formatting standards. And so I sent him this meme, writing code that nobody else can read. And the reason this is funny is because my friend discovered that he can copy the C# code, chunks of it, paste it into ChatGPT, and ask ChatGPT to explain the code to him, an experienced .NET developer. I'd say that's a problem. Just my humble personal opinion, and I'll give you an example of why. When you're having used ChatGPT to explain what the code is doing, for an experienced developer with many, many years of experience in .NET, that is a problem. Now, you could say, oh, well, you need to have better skills. No, like, trust me. And the example that I saw was the ternary operator. I believe that's what this is called. And there's foreshadowing, right? Foreshadowing going on here. So buckle up. I find this useless and terrible. This is like one of those syntactical flourishes in games that developers love because it seems cool and it saves 3 lines, folks. Come on, man. You do not need this. And it's like, well, Steve, it's perfectly readable if you know what you're doing and you're competent. Okay, 3, 2, 1. What does this code do? Tell me. Come on. You need to make a change to it. How do you do it? This is a simple example of a ternary operator. Like, I'm sorry, this is just unreadable. Try to decipher this. And this wasn't even, there weren't many good examples of complex ternary implementations that I could find online in random search. The code that my colleague is having to decipher makes this look like 1 + 1, A + B, whatever. When you add the dot notations of objects, properties, functions on the end of the .NET, the lines become so long, the code becomes so complex, it is completely indecipherable. And yeah, Jason says, perhaps the other developer asked ChatGPT to condense his code, right? It's like the war of AIs. I'm going to be clever and use all this .NET syntax functionality and like, come on, man, just slow it down. Use an if statement occasionally. You're not going to die with an if then. Your code's going to compile just fine. The compiler doesn't care. It's condensing it for you behind the scenes. When you're saving 5 lines or whatever it is in your code, you're not speeding things up. I don't know who you're trying to impress with this. Like, unless you're going into a code beauty competition or obfuscated C++ competition, come on. And foreshadowing kicks in right about now. And that's because Business Central 2024 Wave 2, aka BC version 25, now introduces what I believe is just the completely unnecessary ternary operator. And this was already debated on the BC Twitter a couple months ago when this was known to be released. Like, really, if you're using it for if A, then B or C, well, if it's that simple, just use an if statement. Like, really, you're not saving anything. And if you're doing something more complex like this, you shouldn't be using it because it is completely unreadable. So I'm not seeing the win here, folks. So this is like, it's like bringing back Old English to be fancy, and no one talks like that, folks. So don't write code that other people can't read or that makes it more difficult. I just want to look at a glance at the code. If you use if-thens, if you use 10 if-thens, fine, I'm cool with that. Like, old man here, it's easy to read, simple, clear. Like, you're not in a competition for code density. Greetings from Hungary, Julius. Thank you for joining. So, with that old man rant, little touch of cybersecurity news, which is just a flaming dumpster fire. I'm a big fan of YubiKeys. I've been using them for several years, have several of them, and if I have the option to use a YubiKey instead of a TOTP code, the one-time code, I will choose to use them. They're a little inconvenient for me even, but I'm okay with it as long as it slows down a potential attacker. But I found that most websites, if not all websites that implement the YubiKey, they tend to always have a fallback, whether that's SMS-based, TOTP, or email confirmation. So at the end of the day, I don't know that any of my accounts secured with a YubiKey are actually like truly more secure. If someone can just jump to a less secure authentication method, then so be it. And yeah, So anyway, I enjoy it because it seems, maybe it gives me the warm fuzzy feeling of being more secure. But you may have heard this kind of got a lot of press. YubiKeys are vulnerable to cloning attacks thanks to a newly discovered side channel. So if you read the headline, you're thinking, oh my gosh, YubiKeys compromised, blah, blah, blah. Well, that's what I thought at first. But then if you read into what's really required to exploit this, this is almost an academic attack. And it's attack on the secure chipsets that YubiKey and other devices use. And I don't know that it's a secure enclave. I don't know what type of chip. I didn't look it up, but it's basically, I believe, the chip that is used to store the secret key within the YubiKey. And these are supposed to be unclonable devices, unextractable keys. And so some researchers figured out how to extract them through what's called a side channel attack, where they're analyzing the signals and they then kind of interpret the behavior of the chip in order to decipher what the keys are. Apparently, it's not a direct extraction of the secret keys. So it's pretty involved. You have to have physical access to the FIDO key. You have to rip apart the FIDO key, YubiKey, like literally destroy it by peeling it open and putting, micro soldering level wires on the chip in order to extract the electrical signals as you send pulses to this thing and see how it responds, what voltages come in and out of it. Like pretty involved, not something you're going to do. And then you have to somehow secretly reassemble this destroyed key, get it back to the victim, and you have to already know the username and password, the authentication of whatever website or application they're using the YubiKey with, because you've really only extracted the keys from the YubiKey. You still need them to authenticate on the site. And only then can you exploit this vulnerability. So not really practical in the wild, not really a risk. And I'm assuming YubiKey and others are going to update their firmware to help patch this, maybe alter timing, alter voltage signatures to reduce the chance of this. And it turns out that this is nothing new. Back in 2021, while researching this, Google Titan, excuse me, my youngest daughter has blessed me with a new flavor of cold this week. Several years ago, I don't even know if Google offers these anymore. Google offered this as an attempt to kind of have an alternative to YubiKey that's less expensive. And apparently they work, but they just weren't as well constructed, so not as durable. So I never bothered to use them. And apparently this was cloned in 2021 based on the NXP chips that were used in those devices. So it's a common known flaw. Other secure devices have been subject to that. But if you look at the photos in this article, these just absolutely melted and destroyed because you got to extract and get access to the pins on the chip. So not really practical. Julius asks, what feelings do you have towards Copilot AI in BC, and how do your customers feel about it? So I have had someone tell me that Copilot is a game changer for them for AI development and how much time it saves them, and just raving about how great it is. So I was like, fine. So I talked to my developer. He's like, I'm not really keen on it, but I was like, fine, let me pay for the Copilot not Copilot, but whatever the GitHub one is where it'll autocomplete your AL. Maybe it's Copilot. I don't even know at this point. So I pay the $10 a month, have him try it. And he's like, honestly, it doesn't save me any time. Sure, it guesses some stuff like autocomplete, but more than 50% of the time, you have to override its stupid guess because it's just blindly guessing, just bumping into walls. So someone, was it Jeremy Viska, who did a webinar workshop saying on the topic of how to utilize AI better. So if that is still available through Spare Brained Ideas, he may still be offering that workshop recording. I have not seen it yet, but maybe check that out. I'm not huge on it yet. Maybe it'll help with some things. I think there are other better ways to gain efficiencies. Like I recently tweeted about Cosmo Alpaca. game changer for us, far more valuable than any Copilot or AI or whatever autocomplete tool. Um, because every project we do a lot of PTEs. And if we have a 16-hour PTE, we were spending hours with the project setup, this folder structure, your ignores, your app.json, and then you have to set up your DevOps repository and that project structure and permissions and your testing structure and then your pipelines. It was just super time consuming, crazy tedious. Cosmo Alpaca, click, click, click. It scaffolds out everything for you. Just massive time saver. So my developer says he can set up a brand new project in 1 hour. And he does need to do things, but it builds out the VS Code, it builds out DevOps, creates all the pipelines, does everything we need to be ready to write code in less than 1 hour. And then he just has to go down his checklist to configure it based on the project. That saved us hours and hours with every single project. It blows any Copilot or AI coding tool out of the water for us. So that's where we've decided to invest. So far, we have not been enamored with the AI, or my developer hasn't. So let me know. I think it requires more than a 5-minute discussion. So check out Jeremy's workshop if that is available. So another cybersecurity topic, this one pretty typical. If you know anything about the US government in general or governments in general, this will not come as a huge surprise. I'm assuming this was outsourced, some outsourced project done by some low bidder firm on a government contract. And this was widely reported, but Matt Johansson, Matt J on Twitter, this is where I saw it. The most basic SQL injection ever in the known crew member and cockpit access security system used by airlines and the TSA, which is the United States Transportation Security Administration. Basically, this is the system that identifies pilots and crew members and the stewards on the airplanes and people who are permitted to kind of bypass airport security as authorized individuals with their specialized name tag with barcodes and photos. Basically, with this SQL injection, literally just simple bypassing the login completely with a basic SQL injection in the username or password, you're able to get admin level access to these critical TSA systems, create any users you want, swap out photos of pilots, anything. Just jaw-dropping, phenomenal. And so, why do I bother using a YubiKey when a junior programmer in a foreign country created this app with completely unqualified SQL injection capability for what you could consider to be a national security system? It's brilliant. On the good news front, NIST has finalized post-quantum encryption standards. I have not really followed up on this. I was really interested in, say, the HSA and AES encryption contest. That was back in 99, 2000 timeframe. But I was vaguely aware of this, but I haven't really studied them. But these post-quantum encryption standards are apparently based on lattice-based encryption, whatever that is. I know that word. And the terms are Kyber Crystal and Kyber something else, apparently 2 variants. And it is based on secure key exchange, symmetric encryption, and I believe cryptographic signatures. There are like 3 or 4 different categories where these different algorithms were chosen. And a while back, a researcher had claimed that they had found a type of attack to reduce the effectiveness of these specific post-quantum encryption standards, but it was later found that there was a mistake in that research that kind of invalidated that potential attack vector. So So far, these appear to be effective. Now, the route to implementing these is a long and arduous and painful one. So, my understanding is no one's going to rip out their AES and start implementing these, but at least it's there. People will start building APIs and SDKs for implementing them. And if a risk does emerge, it will be a possible option to migrate. But if you imagine all the things that are using AES and SSH, AES and my brain, whatever the hashing algorithm is. Anyway, I'm going to stop. And on another conversation, I spoke with a friend, and he was really down because adoption of particular technology technology and philosophy wasn't going as quickly as he thought. And he's like, "Come on, how come people don't understand the benefit of this great new technology and this life-changing miracle stuff?" And I'm like, "Look, it's early days, right? And there's just a lot to work on. And, kind of like the government say, well, you need to stay secure as a consumer, but they want law enforcement to have a backdoor and everything. And it's like this internal struggle and battle. Well, that's going on everywhere with technology and security and encryption and these new technologies." And I tried to console him, and I was just looking for possible explanations, and I just came around this gem. And the technology world is, in many respects, very, very early. They're like post-quantum cryptography. It's brand new, right? We don't know where it's going to go. Just like quantum computing, we don't know where it's going to go. So to try and predict the effects of these technologies is nearly impossible. Just like when we were using 28.8 modems, 14.4 modems. I grew up with a 300 baud VIC modem on my Commodore 64. So little did I know that text-based CompuServe, where I could watch the cursor draw on the screen, would turn into me live streaming in 1080p with a 4K camera. Like, really? There's no way we could have predicted that. So I found this entertaining, and this is by Bob Metcalfe, the inventor of Ethernet, 1973, excuse me. Founded 3Com Corp in 1979. I don't know what happened to 3Com, probably got acquired. But he has, I don't know him, or I don't know much about him, but he would boldly make these predictions as part of his opinion column in InfoWorld and in other platforms. And so he'd make these crazy predictions, like he predicted that the internet would collapse in a flaming pile of rubble because there simply wasn't the bandwidth and the throughput to support it, and everyone would cause it to crash. So it gives you some context. So I just happened to find this one. It's this low-res scan that you probably can't read, but it was from 1993, and he says that wireless computing is a fad and it is going to completely flop permanently. Wireless computing, whatever that means. Statements like, "It is my sad duty to inform you that the coming resounding flop in wireless mobile computing will, alas, be permanent." You heard it here, folks. Here first, folks. Simply put, there aren't enough megahertz to go around out there in our increasingly polluted electromagnetic ether. And it is ecologically unsound waste of energy to broadcast bits in all directions when they need to be received in only one. The ether is too scarce to be wasted on non-broadcast communications. Right? Like, bold prediction. We'll be back to stringing fibers instead of computing on the road without wires. We will be installing ubiquitous plugs. We do have plugs, but so when you think about how something is not evolving, some technology is very immature, just keep this in mind, right? Just look back 20 plus years and you will see that he says bathrooms are still predominantly plumbed for more or less the same reasons computers will stay wired. Nothing like an analogy of a toilet and internet and networking technology, folks. So there you have it. Prediction of the future. And To bring it to today, that's like predicting what's going to happen with AI, whether that's LLMs or image generators, whatever they're called. And I just looked up OpenAI's competition, and OpenAI and ChatGPT were all the rage, right? But then it kind of like settled down, and people were like, I don't know, this isn't necessarily so great. So I don't know who half of these are. Anthropic, DeepMind, Cohere, Stability, Inflection, Aleph, AI21, like Hugging Face, it goes on and on and on. And there's a guy on YouTube who does more of the image generation and video generation tools, and he tests them out. Like I can't keep track of them, and they are advancing on a weekly basis where you give them a still image and it will create a video clip. And it is, the pace is stunning to going from this smeared, incomprehensible mess of a video to a passable video. Not great, but you can get 6 to 10 seconds of video and you're like, wow. To have produced that any other means would have cost thousands of dollars using some completely other much more intensive systems. So pretty hard to predict the future. Speaking of the future, Business Central. Business Central now with BC25 will let you adjust your environment version updates to have up to a 5-month delay with major updates. And apparently minor updates are now optional. I don't know quite what that means yet, whether you can completely skip them indefinitely and just go from version 24.0 to 25.0. Seems like a bold move, but I guess that's an option. So in theory, if I'm understanding this new scheme, you can have, and again, another Yunchu blog post number 55177. Head on over to ychums.com. And so from Yoon's blog post, he has this screenshot or this image where you can defer your updates from, say, October 1st through April 1st. Like, I don't know. We'll see how that implements. But based on current BC Admin Center configuration, my understanding is you will have to do this manually every single major release with every single environment. So like once the version comes out, everything resets, at least so far at the current configuration, everything resets and you have to go back into that environment and defer your updates. Now, I did ask Yoon if he is aware whether the BC Admin API will be able to manage these, and it does appear that that is on the roadmap. So if you have 50 customers and you routinely defer them, you're going to look in the admin API, because logging into 50 customers' environments times 3 or 4, that's 200 different environments. That's just insane. So we'll probably be developing BC admin tools to automate that deferral process. Okay. And on the new release note, I'm still keeping an eye on what appears to be a BCAL compiler bug that we first observed a problem with on July 19th. So it's been a while. And given the lack of updates on this GitHub issue 7813, we are invoking what we are now calling our emergency release procedure. We are no longer able to wait for a fix on this. This is causing our pipelines to fail. We can't even get our pipelines to run on next major. So we are going to have to eliminate use of the caption class assignment in our code and hard code values, because we aren't going to wait until October 1st to see if they fix this problem. So we're going to have to do a preprocessor directive conditional compilation to get rid of any reference to caption class and get something that will actually compile and deploy. So this is the first clear, what I'm calling a breaking change, even though it's a bug, breaking change, whatever, in our next minor, next major pipeline. and we are having to work around it because I'm not going to wait for a fix. So just a heads up, it's good for us. We're just going to take care of it. We're going to fix it. We're going to do builds of our AppSource app and our PTEs. And yeah, maybe eventually we'll do a test in 3 months, 6 months, whatever, see if it's been fixed. But anyone using this, beware. And Summit NA roadshows, we've got a few coming up. Atlanta, September 25th, Indianapolis, November 6th, Houston, December 5th. Head on over to dynamicscommunities.com and check out a Summit Community Roadshow. Other upcoming events, Proximos Eventos. Days of Knowledge America is coming up next week in Atlanta, Georgia. Summit North America in a month in San Antonio, Texas. I've confirmed I did have a flight. I need to go find my hotel reservation, and I am working with Silvio to prep for our session. Directions EMEA is November in Vienna, and there is BC Day Australia, New Zealand, November 28th in Sydney, Australia. Go check that out at Business Central Day, Co. NZ. And we have Engage 2024, December 9th through 12th in St. Petersburg, Tampa, Florida area. www.mstug.com. So there is a conference September, October, November, December, every month for the rest of the year. Go check it out. You can go continent hopping, United States, Europe, Sydney, and back to United States in Florida. And on the excellence update front for the ERP Center of Excellence in Berlin, El Salvador, we have done a launch of the help desk service run by the ERP Center of Excellence interns. They have set up, fully configured, and managed the Freshdesk help desk software. So we are now doing kind of a soft launch by accepting support tickets from as a test from our Blue Dragonfly and test team organizations. Tanya and I, my business partner, we are sending those tickets to them to have them start working out the kinks, developing a process for their help desk system. So any partners or customers looking for kind of a turnkey help desk solution, that's what they are offering. And in order to kind of brand that, they are offering that as ERP support team. Nice, innocuous brand. And their offer is to provide Business Central support for direct customers or partners. So if you're a partner and you don't have a dedicated help desk, that's expensive. If you have consultants who are fielding support tickets, well, this would be a turnkey service where ERP Center of Excellence interns receive the support request as a generic ERP support team help desk. They will triage for you. If you want those tickets to be communicated to you, you'll be added to the ticket and you can handle it, or they can try to assist. Or if you want, they can coordinate with the customer directly to provide a full service help desk experience. So that is what the interns in Berlin, El Salvador are building. So we have created a partner onboarding form where the partner can sign up, enroll a customer, things like that. We're still refining that, but yeah, all built and managed by the interns in Berlin, El Salvador. So that's pretty exciting. They are looking to offer service to partners and customers. And Jason says that R. DeBath is one of his colleagues. So thank you, R. DeBath, for submitting that GitHub issue on the Business Central AL compiler. I was far too lazy to submit all the meticulous information that GitHub user did. So I'm just writing on the coattails of great developers, and hopefully it gets fixed. So anyway, we are also on the ERP Center of Excellence preparing to have a structure to bring on another consultant trainee or candidate. That person is just waiting for our signal to go. They are prepping for the kind of our minimum requirements, which is 60 words per minute typing, and we have an English assessment, and then they can start the program. And I'm also working with someone else who will be a junior developer candidate. And the requirement is that they move to the town of Berlin, El Salvador. So one is in Berlin, the consultant, the junior developers in San Salvador. So they are working on moving to Berlin. And so we're building an amazing program there. Word is getting out, and we are starting to line up candidates. So it's pretty exciting there. And on the Q&A front, I had something in mind for this, but you know what? I don't know what happened to one of my slides, but yeah. Any questions? Thanks for joining. One of the questions I have is, how do you deal with a day of calls? The last 2 weeks, because I've been working on managing the new interns, I'm having calls with them twice a day, every single day. That on top of my Spanish classes, on top of customer calls, support calls. I was literally in calls from 8 a.m. through, say, noon or 1 p.m. Then I grab lunch. Then I have afternoon calls. Then I got to go pick up the kids. Then I got to come back and breathe for 5 minutes. And then, grocery store, cook dinner. Then I have our evening call for our dev team. Literally in calls all day, zero time to check email, zero time to follow up on stuff, zero time to actually get any other work done. Like, am I alone here? How does anyone do this? It's crazy when calls are stacked up. Like, the calls are valuable, but I'm unable to independently do any work. And I'm apparently, this is new to me because I'm just like, what is going on? I'm not used to having 4 hours of nonstop calls. It is completely debilitating in terms of productivity. So I'm trying to adjust. I'm reducing my call time with the Berlin team, just trying to find gaps where I can catch up on email. It's pretty crazy. Anyway, how do you deal with it? So it's been a short week. It is now flaming hot. Let's see what the temperature is today so far. Let me check my little weather station, see what it says. So it's showing 86 degrees right now at 9:20 a.m., whereas the weather app is showing 80. So little discrepancy there, wherever this weather station is for the weather app. High of 102. So it's going to be a toasty one, folks. Get that iced coffee in the mix. This is a iced latte with passenger coffee espresso. Very, very good. Yes, Julia says, I would not be able to do that. Every call needs follow-up. Exactly. Like some of the management calls, like, okay, we prioritize with Berliners. We do a task list. What are you going to work on? Any questions? What do you do next? Great. Adios. And then Spanish, getting my butt kicked in Spanish class, need to study more. But then the customer calls, like, okay, here's the to-do list. And then I've got 35 emails waiting that I just haven't been able to follow up with. So it is just pump the brakes, folks. Anyway, have a good Friday. Enjoy, drink some good coffee. Try to keep up with Business Central on top of everything else. I don't know how anyone does it. I'm barely able to keep up, and it's kind of my part-time job. So yeah, thanks for joining, Mo. Adios. Hold up. Need to practice my Spanish here. There's a phrase that Jocelyn in Berlin taught me, and it is que tengas un buen fin de semana. That is a strange one. Buen. I need to. Buen? Have a nice weekend, regardless. Okay. Adios.